Good evening. It's Reverend Mark Hughes. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, and welcome to Juxtaposition. Juxtaposition, issues affecting black folks, affecting change. And today I'm happy to say we're here just kind of hanging out. Wanted to just show up and spend some time with you just for a little while. Got a few things to report on, and I think the main thing we're going to be talking about is where's the white folks? Where are the white folks? That's what I'm asking today. Where's the white folks? Because what we're doing right now is we're looking at this issue of civil rights, and we're just looking around to see who's responding to civil rights and how. Just a really interesting response that we're seeing. I think some people have kind of gotten tired, and so we'll talk about that today. So I think what we're going to call this, we're going to call this justice movement. How about that? We're going to call it justice movement. Racism in the United States has served as a decisive factor in the elections. Also, it is actually at the center of all of this chaos. Racism is at the center of all of this chaos. Yet our moderate and progressive allies, they seem to be a little bit tired of talking about racism. Maybe it's an unwillingness, or maybe it's just an inability, but it's not new because our nation has always had this endemic where we have ebbed and flowed. We've gone to high peaks and we've gone to low valleys. Surrounding conversations on racism, and we just never seem to be able to turn that corner. And this is kind of where we are right now. So yeah, we got to figure out how can we be expected to defend ourselves against this unprecedented attack, and yes, I mean unprecedented attack on our hard-fought civil rights. These civil rights have been purchased with the blood of our ancestors, and at the moment, we're looking around and we're seeing progressives and moderates. They just refuse to face it. Just don't know how to face it. So how do we get them to understand that America is going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again until we get systemic racism right? So we'll have some conversation about that today. Before we get too much into that, though, I do want to get into the paper. This is the 7 days. This 7 days hot off the press. It's still smoking. Woo! There's a good write-up in here called Taking It to the Streets. From Bennington to Newport, Vermonters gather to protest Trump. They're protesting Trump is what they're protesting. It says here the 92-year-old Troy resident who had worried that a sign made of paper might have gotten soggy on Saturday's light rain scrawled her simple message on the only waterproof material she had handy, a plastic shipping envelope. And they go on and on. Throngs of protesters jammed Burlington's Church Street and Brattleboro. Organizers reported at least 2,000 people, twice the number that had registered to attend the largest protest city officials could remember. Hundreds lined Route 7 on the historic Shelburne, holding American and Canadian flags and homemade signs waving to passing drivers. Big rig drivers blasted their horns to support the protesters, and they all whooped, whooped, whooped. And it goes on. I'll give you a little bit more. Here's a good part. It says, there were a few tense moments. A handful of large, loud pickup trucks roared menacingly in the circle around the triangular town green. Let me see if I can find something impactful. Marrier, holding a protest social security sign, talked to him for a while. She later declared him a really nice but uninformed person. So, and the article goes on and on. This is like a full spread. This is on page 20 and 21 of your 7 days. Oh, here's another piece. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders continues to spur progressive progressives to action with a fight oligarchy. There you go. You don't have to just fight Bernie, you can fight oligarchy. Tour that is drawing his biggest crowds to date. And U.S. Representative Becca Balint, who spoke at the Brattleboro protest Saturday, has also strongly pushed back on Trump's agenda, including his attacks on LGBTQ rights. Peter Welsh lambasted Trump's tariff policy. He lambasted his tariff policy as accomplishing nothing except making families and farmers and manufacturers pay more. And the list goes on and on and on about stuff that happened on taking it to the streets. And despite the fact that systemic racism was at the heart, it's the reason why the election ended the way it did. And it's at the heart of this entire attack, at the very, very heart of it. It didn't seem like that hands-off protest quite got the memo. Now, again, these are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that were at this protest, but somehow or another, that message was just not ringing through. Why? Why? Don't understand. Do not understand. A little analysis on this slide, control room. The current administration has embarked on a sweeping campaign. This is to reverse decades of civil rights progress. Now, again, we're talking about civil rights. Civil rights. We're talking about, you remember the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment? You remember the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Maybe you remember the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And perhaps you might remember the Housing Rights Act of 1968. So at the heart of civil rights, it was on the backs of black folks, what we know and understand. We know that the 14th Amendment, along with the 13th and the 15th Amendments, in lieu of a constitutional convention, there were 3 constitutional amendments whereupon which we built Reconstruction and we moved this nation forward despite a 100-year setback before we got to Brown versus the Board of Education. You remember that, civil rights in America, where upon having reached the Brown versus the Board of Education, and over that span, in the only non-conservative court in the United States history, we were able to pass all of those aforementioned acts in order to make significant progress in for black civil rights so that it could serve as the foundation for the LGBTQIA community's civil rights, as well as the disabilities community's civil rights. Remember those civil rights? So those are the civil rights that are being taken from us nationally. Those are the civil rights that are being taken from us nationally. But yet and still, here when we have an opportunity to come together and to protest what is happening nationally, we are doing something else. Why? Here's I digress. So let's talk about this executive order. This is an executive order. This is 14173. 14173. I'm sure everybody's saying, what in the heck is he talking about? 14173. I'm glad you asked. So the executive order 14173 is titled, and this is somewhat ambiguous. You got to understand that it was titled by the current administration, and it's backwards day. So what they're saying is it's saying we're ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. This is right out of the Heritage Foundation. This is right out of the playbook of ALEC. So here we have, it was issued on the day after election. It significantly alters the landscape of civil rights protections. And also, by dismantling affirmative action policies and eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, this is at the heart of some of what we're seeing here, these programs, and increasing legal scrutiny on DEI initiatives. The order, what it does is it actually undermines longstanding protections against systemic discrimination. So one of the major things that this executive order does, and this is foundational, this is at the foundation of all of this, is it actually rescinds a bunch of executive orders. We need to know this. We need to understand what's going on, what's at the heart of some of this chaos that we see. So Executive Order 11246 prohibited employment discrimination and mandated affirmative action for federal contractors. I said it actually prohibited employment discrimination. So what we have is a chipping away at the foundation of EEOC. Those are the laws that just make it illegal to discriminate against somebody in the workplace. It also rescinded Executive Order 12898, by the way, the Executive Order 11246 has been on the books since 1965. It was rescinded. So the Executive Order 12828 has been on the books since 1994. It focused on environmental justice for minority and low-income communities. So these are some of the foundational building blocks that are being pulled out from under us, while the hands-off movement is going on. I would just add that, as we're focusing on some of these, I don't expect you to remember all of them, that you just got to put all of this stuff together, because what we're talking about is we're talking about something that's fundamental. We're talking about civil rights. We know that civil rights were constructed in the United States kind of as an alternative narrative to human rights. We know that here in the United States, there are many human rights treaties that we haven't signed yet, and there are many human rights requirements or expectations that have been levied upon the United States, just to say, hey, say for example, like the crime against humanity with chattel slavery. Still waiting to see where that apology comes from. I digress, but the closest we can get to human rights in America is this thing called civil rights. And that's the thing that we read about while we were in the schools. Remember when we were in school, when we read about all of the civil rights movements? Remember we learned about Harriet Tubman, and we learned about W.E.B. Du Bois. We learned about the blood, the sweat, and the tears that was invested in protecting and establishing civil rights for black folks, and then subsequently all other folks who are from marginalized communities in the United States. Those are the civil rights that we're talking about right now. So Executive Order 13583 was also rescinded. That's from 2011, which promoted diversity in the federal workplace. And what that did is that decreased federal workforce representation from marginalized communities. So there's a lot to talk about here. I want to though divert your attention for a moment. We'll come back to that. Divert your attention for a moment. What about this whole business about the federal workforce? Now we already know that USAID, which is federal aid for what really is, in summation, is black and brown nations globally. We understood that was pulled out early in the game, and under the auspices of reducing our expenses, our budget as a government. We decided that what we'd do is we're going to go in and we're going to let's reduce the workforce. Let's just reduce the workforce. So if you take a close look at that, thank you there, control room. If you take a close look at that and what that actually means, the federal reduction impact, I'm going to talk about this for a second, because it occurred to me, and I did this research just because I wanted to satisfy myself. It occurred to me wait a minute, the federal workforce is the most diverse workforce in the United States. Let's say that one more time. The federal workforce is the most diverse workforce in the United States. And what I'm talking about is I'm talking about black and white. Now, there are other numbers that I didn't capture here, But the only numbers that I did capture is where in the federal workforce do we see disproportionate racial representation, where what you see is that there is that the representation is above that. It's a higher representation than it is in the workforce outside of the federal government. I'm going to say that one more time. This is what we're looking at. These are the only instances where the workforce representation, the racial demographic representation is actually higher than the workforce demographic representation, racial demographic representation on the outside of the federal government. So it happens in two instances. One is for white folks, and the other one is for black folks. And what you see is black folks' representation in the federal government is highest. What we see is that disproportionate representation. So what we're seeing is equity in real form. That disproportionate representation is at 5 points. Whereas white folks is somewhere like right around 3. But notice this, black folks, they're most concentrated in administrative and clerical areas, whereas in what that SES, Senior Executive Service, what that means is when you get beyond GS 14 and 15, there's a Senior Executive Service level that is equivalent to, and I'm an old military guy, equivalent to like being a general in the Army. So what we see is there is an underrepresentation of black folks at that level. This is relevant. And then what we also see is that there's a light overrepresentation for white folks in the federal services, especially in executive and policy making positions. So thank you for that slide. So just to kind of get you to see there, it's not by coincidence that this administration is targeting the federal workforce. It's not just because they're trying to save money or to kind of cut some corners. They're attacking what they know to be a workforce that has a significant representation of black and brown folks. Yeah, I want to just talk a little bit about the recent rollbacks in civil rights protection and what can actually be done about some of this here towards the last number of minutes here, as we're starting to push up against it here. We're getting close. We're going to be closing out pretty soon. We'll come back to that, but before we do that, I've got a couple things. Let me see here. The Truth and Justice series. I want to talk a little bit about that. The Truth and Justice series. This is something that I started to do at the top of the year, mostly because what we saw coming was a bunch of lies, and what I mean by that is just that. What we saw coming is that this entire administration, all of this, these policies, all of the premises upon which a lot of this stuff is standing. In fact, the efforts underway are to essentially erase a lot of our history like it used to be. Remember, before we started to understand our true history as a nation, and before we started to unearth, via the 1619 Project or via the First African Landing Day or the National Museum of African American History and Culture or the Hampton History Museum or any of the other apparatuses, the 400-year African American History Commission, before we started to unearth all of this stuff back over these last 10 years or so, a lot of us were kind of oblivious, and we started to understand our true history. We started to understand where this nation really came from. A lot of folks kind of got nervous, and there was probably some fairly significant progress made. Statues came down, flags came down. Folks started zeroing in on getting a better understanding, even in our educational institutions, about what this thing is. That critical race theory, though it's critical and it is about race, it is not a theory. What it is it's about the true history of this nation. But yeah, just focusing in on this slide up here. This is See, truth and justice, they're the cornerstone of our personal character, our family relationships, and the foundation of our communities and our societies. They're essential to the constructing values, belief systems, and the principles that guide ethical decision making and human flourishing. Truth and justice are not just abstract ideas, they require discovery, action, and intentionality. So the Truth and Justice series, this is a year-long journey that I'd love you to take with us. We've only had a few sessions so far. It explores the profound importance of truth in confronting our shared history, including the enduring legacy of slavery and systemic injustice, the urgency of creating justice where it's been absent, and also the series, it challenges participants to act boldly in the pursuit of truth and commit to implementing justice as practice and in principle in their lives and communities. It's drawn on a timeless vision of the world where the oppressed are freed, the brokenhearted find comfort, and those silent are heard. This series invites participants from all faiths and traditions to join in an urgent conversation about the central role of truth and justice that it's got to play in shaping our present as well as our future. Thanks for that slide. So this thing is all about a search for truth. It's all about the practice of justice. It's all about freedom and healing, the role of community, and the urgency and responsibilities. Meet us over at the Fletcher Free Library. Fletcher Free Library, if you can hang out with us over there on the fourth Tuesday of every month. The fourth Tuesday of every month. The fourth Tuesday of every month, be at Fletcher Free. I don't have my calendar in front of me right now, but you can go and take a look at that. The fourth Tuesday, that's coming up here in a couple weeks. Meet us there from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Fletcher Free Library. We're usually in the Fletcher room, and you can just go over and hang out with us, and we can do some talking. I think this one that's coming up, if I'm not mistaken, I think what we have is we have on tap a conversation about our justice agenda, and that's the legislative agenda that's in play. So that is truth and justice. You know what I'm holding here in my hand? This is a memorandum for all department employees from the Attorney General. The Attorney General of the state of Vermont? Nope. The United States Attorney General. Here's what it says. It says that the Attorney General, that the Department of Justice is committed to enforcing all the federal civil rights laws and ensuring equal protection under the law. Equal protection under the law. Remember the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment? So that's what he's talking about. So now get this. I'm going to pause for a minute because I want you to imagine this for a second. Are you still with me? So watch this. So the Justice Department actually, the Attorney General, his responsibilities, just like the Attorney General of the state of Vermont, there's a couple different directions things can swing. One is defense, to defend. The Attorney General has a responsibility to defend the state. The Attorney General has a responsibility to defend the citizens of the state of Vermont. And then the other one is prosecutorial. The Attorney General has the responsibility to prosecute crimes against the state and prosecute crimes against the citizens of the state. So imagine this, in a crazy mixed up world, what if the Attorney General, in instances where, say, for example, the Attorney General was going to enforce consent decrees. What is a consent decree? A consent decree is essentially an action by the Attorney General that they place a requirement on an agency like a law enforcement agency or a school to say, here are the criteria that you must meet in order to advance yourself from a monitoring phase because you have been non-compliant in exercising justice in the execution of your duties. You've shown consistently that you cannot be trusted. You violated consistently the civil rights of citizens. Therefore, we're going to monitor you for a while. Consent decree. So what if the current government said, all of those consent decrees that we wanted to place, that we had in place or that were pending, don't worry about them. It's not so important that schools are adhering to what was traditionally civil rights, or law enforcement agencies for that matter. What if, as a matter of fact, even in, say, for example, housing, where historically we've had fair housing laws in place, where if a person went to buy or rent a home from the lending institution or the person who's selling it, and there were infractions where there was discriminatory practices, that there might be a possibility that the Justice Department could come in and protect its citizens from that. Let's just say hypothetically, if they decided, oh, you know, that's not so important anymore, we're not going to do that. Here's what we want you to do. Watch this. Here's what we want you to do is this prosecutorial apparatus, since we've decided that this whole idea about diversity, equity, and inclusion, not such a good idea, because really we believe that it's discriminatory. It's discriminatory. No, forget about the fact that it's reparative and that there are disparate outcomes, and we've chosen to address them as a result of what we've learned about our true history as a nation and the legacy of slavery and systemic racism and the racially disparate outcomes that are occurring because of all of the policy that we implemented as a nation to make some people middle class and rich and to deprive others from it. Forget about all of that. What we want to do is we want to call DEI discriminatory. And one step further, Justice Department, we want you to prosecute it. Well, that's exactly what's going on. So in this particular memo, it says by March 1st, consistent with Executive Order, guess what? You guessed it, 14173. Excuse me, consistent with that order, Civil Rights Division and the Office of Legal Policy shall jointly submit a report to the Associated Attorney General containing recommendations for enforcing federal civil rights laws and taking other appropriate measures to encourage private sector to end illegal, this is what they're calling DEI, illegal discrimination and preferences, including policies related to DEI and DEIA. So it goes on, and there are several other points here. And I think in a wrap, in a 30-second wrap, I would just say the withdrawal of civil rights here in the United States over the last 60 to 70 days has been equivalent to, in trajectory and velocity, to a time at which we were pre-Jim Crow. That's 1890. That's the level of civil rights that exists today. Let's get with the program. Let's focus in on civil rights. Those of us who are wandering around looking for something to do are so distracted or unable to focus on what it is that you should be doing. Let's focus on civil rights, because civil rights means all of us. Thanks. I'm glad you came today. We'll come back next month with a follow-up on this particular episode, because we want to get some stuff popping. This is Juxtaposition. Black folks, issues affecting black folks affecting change. Thank you. Have a good evening.